Tonight, I want to share a collection of true experiences from Malaysia. These are not stories meant to shock or to frighten loudly. They're moments that happened quietly, in familiar places to ordinary people. A rented flat, a shared home, a house across the street that was never supposed to be occupied. Each story stands on its own, but together they share something unsettling. Not everything that disturbs us comes with noise or warning. Sometimes it appears slowly, calmly, and only when it's already too close.
When my husband, Amin, and I had just gotten married, we rented a small flat. It wasn't a Malay area. Most of the people living there were Chinese, and even the owner of the unit we rented was Chinese. You know those horror stories where a neighbor suddenly tells you the house you're living in is haunted? I never thought that would actually happen to me, but it did. Thinking back now, it almost feels funny, but at the time, it didn't feel funny at all. Every morning, Amin and I were polite with the neighbors. We'd smile, say good morning, or just hi, nothing more than that. One morning, as I was about to leave for work, I ran into one of the neighbors on the staircase. We'll call her Auntie. I greeted her like usual. She looked at me, paused for a moment, and then asked, "You live in that unit, huh?" I said yes. Then I asked her why. Her expression changed immediately. Her face became serious. She looked at me for a few seconds before saying, "You very brave, you know. People usually don't last more than 2 or 3 months in that house. They all leave. Nobody wants to stay there." I looked at Amin. Amin looked at me. We both laughed awkwardly and replied, "It's okay, Auntie. Everything's fine." Then we quickly walked down the stairs and left. Honestly, I didn't think much of what she said. I brushed it off completely. But not long after that, the first incident happened, and that was when her words came back to me. At that time, I was pregnant. I don't remember exactly how many months along I was. That night, Amin had already fallen asleep. I couldn't sleep. During my pregnancy, my back pain was really bad. Even turning my body in bed was difficult. Sometimes I had to wake my husband just to help push me over. I turned to look at Amin. He was already deep asleep. So I closed my eyes and tried to sleep. Then suddenly, I heard a woman humming. For context, our bed was right next to the window. Our unit was at the very end of the block. No one could walk past our window because there was a gate. The staircase wasn't near our unit either. It was further in the middle of the building. In front of our flat was nothing but bushes and overgrown grass. It was always quiet. That's why the sound stood out so clearly. The humming was soft, very soft, almost like it was drifting in the air. I was terrified. I didn't dare to open my eyes. What if I opened them and something was right beside me? So I stayed completely still. I didn't move a muscle. I focused only on the sound. It was faint, but it was there. Because I was so scared, I forced myself to stay still until eventually I fell asleep. At that time, I thought maybe that was it. But the story didn't end there. After I gave birth, I was doing long-distance learning. My mother helped take care of my baby, so I would travel back and forth, sending my child to her place, then picking him up again. One day, my mother told me, "Don't go back to that flat, just stay here tonight." But I refused. I said I wanted to go home. So I did. I parked my car and climbed up the stairs while carrying my baby. Less than 5 minutes after entering the house, my baby suddenly screamed in fear. You have to imagine this, a baby who had been calm, quiet, and sleepy, suddenly screaming as if something terrified him. I panicked. I held him tightly in my arms. That was when I saw it. A piece of white cloth passed through the kitchen. It was fast, but it was clear enough. My entire body froze. I was shocked and terrified at the same time. But I knew I couldn't just stand there. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a bag, stuffed in whatever clothes I could reach, and left the house immediately. I didn't even turn off the lights. There was no time for that. I was afraid if I stayed any longer, I might see something else. I got into my car and drove straight to my mother's house. Once I was in the car, I didn't look back, not even once. I was terrified. The moment my baby was inside the car, he stopped crying. His mood returned to normal as if nothing had happened. I drove straight to my mother's house because I couldn't even think clearly about where else to go. When I arrived, my late father was shocked to see me standing there with a bag of clothes and my baby in my arms. He immediately told me to come inside. After that night, I never stayed in that rented flat again.
I have a frightening experience that I can't forget, and it happened in the rented house I'm still living in now. This incident happened in November 2024, not long ago. I live in a flat with 4 housemates. I share a room with Ina, not her real name. We're very close because we've been living together for about 6 years. It was late afternoon, close to Maghrib. I had just returned from work. When I opened the door, I saw Ina sitting in the living room working on her laptop. She was sitting quietly, focused. She asked me, "Back early today?" I replied, "Yeah, didn't feel like coming home late. The lift always has issues at night. Still a lot of work to do?" She said, "That's the problem. Go shower first. I still have work to finish." I went into the room to get ready to shower, glancing at Ina in the living room. She was working in the dark. That annoyed me a little. On top of that, our house already had a history of disturbances, so I turned on all the lights while walking toward the bathroom. Ina stayed in the living room, focused on her work. After I finished showering, I went back into the room and noticed my phone screen lighting up. A message had come in. I locked the door and checked my phone. The message was from Ina. She asked me if I wanted her to buy any food before she came home from work. I froze, because if Ina was only on her way back from work, then who was sitting in the living room just now? Suddenly, my bedroom door was knocked on hard. I heard Ina's voice calling my name, telling me to open the door. At that moment, I was absolutely terrified, because I knew the real Ina was still on her way home. It didn't make sense for her to be there so quickly. Her office is at least 15 minutes away. I tried to recite verses that I knew, but my mouth wouldn't move. My tongue felt heavy. I couldn't say anything out loud, so I recited everything silently in my heart. Then it laughed, a sharp, mocking laugh. I was on the verge of crying. I didn't know what to do. I was too scared to run out of the room. At the same time, I kept messaging Ina to come home immediately and not to stop anywhere to buy food. She didn't ask many questions. She already knew something was wrong, because this wasn't the first time our house had disturbances. The thing started kicking the bedroom door. Then, suddenly, it stopped. It stopped when 2 other housemates who lived in the room opposite returned home. I could hear the main wooden door opening. It always made a sound when pushed. I heard their loud voices laughing and chatting as they came in. Even then, I still asked in the house group chat whether they were really home. They replied and asked why the house was so dark and why no lights were turned on. I immediately ran out to them and told them everything that had happened. They tried to calm me down. They looked at each other while I was telling the story, as if they couldn't believe it. They said they had been renting the place for almost 7 years and never experienced anything like that. About 15 minutes later, Ina arrived home. I repeated the story to everyone. She nodded slowly. She understood.
She knew that the house had something there. There were many other strange incidents in that house, but this was the most extreme, because whatever it was, it took the form of my own housemate. Later, I did some research. What I found was something people refer to as a mimic, an entity that imitates someone familiar.
This is my own experience. It happened during the movement control order when I was staying with my family in a double-story terrace house in Denai Alam. Our house was ordinary, but directly in front of it there was another house, an empty one. It had been vacant for a long time, no occupants, no lights at night. During the lockdown, we rarely went out in the evenings. After Asr, my wife and I would sit at the porch on folding chairs. Our children would play in front of the house, riding small bicycles, running around the porch. The atmosphere was quiet but peaceful. No cars passed by, no neighbors came out. Until one afternoon, things began to change. At first, it was my eldest child who stopped playing. He stood still, staring at the empty house across from us. I thought he was tired. I called his name. He didn't answer. Instead, he asked me, "Baba, is there someone in that house?" I looked straight at the empty house. The windows were dark. The door closed. There was nothing. I replied, "No, that house is empty." My child went quiet. Then he continued playing. I didn't think much of it. The next day, it happened again. This time, both of my children stopped playing at the same time. The younger one held his brother's hand tightly. Both of them stared at the empty house. "Baba, there's an old man inside that house," my child said calmly. There was no fear in his voice. It was the tone of someone describing something ordinary. I stood up from my chair. Something felt wrong in my chest. I looked carefully at the empty house. That was when I noticed something. The curtain on the ground floor was slightly open. I was certain it had always been fully closed before. I asked, "What kind of old man?" My child answered with words that made the back of my neck turn cold. "White hair, sitting near the window. He's smiling." That evening, I immediately told my children to go inside. I didn't scold them, but my voice was firm. I closed the gate earlier than usual. That night, I couldn't sit still. From the upstairs window, I watched the empty house. It was dark, no movement. I tried to convince myself that my children were just imagining things, bored from being cooped up during the lockdown. But on the third day, it became clear. That afternoon, I was sitting at the porch again while my children played. Then I saw it myself. The curtain of the empty house moved slowly, as if someone inside was pulling it. Then I saw a shadow standing behind the window. I couldn't see the face clearly, but the shape of the head and shoulders, it looked like an old man. My body froze. Before I could say anything, my child cried out softly, "Baba, he's waving!" I looked at my children. Both of them were waving back at the empty house. Their small hands moved slowly, following the motion. I stood up immediately, grabbed their hands, and pulled them into the house. I didn't look back. My wife had just come out from the kitchen and looked confused when she saw my face. From that day on, at the same time every evening, close to Maghrib, the shadow would appear. Sometimes on the ground floor, sometimes upstairs. Sometimes only an old hand could be seen through the gap in the curtain. My children began saying strange things. "Baba, the grandpa told me to come play. Baba, he said his house is lonely." That's when I realized something. Whatever it wasn't focused on me. It was focused on my children. So I did what I needed to do as a father. After Asr, I no longer allowed my children to play outside. I turned off the porch lights early. I played recitations inside the house. I taught my children short verses to recite. A few days later, one evening, I gathered the courage to stand outside. I faced the empty house directly and spoke out loud, calmly, but firmly. This is our home. My children are under my protection. Do not call them anymore. The curtain of the empty house closed by itself, slowly. After that, everything went quiet. Until today, the house remains empty. No one has moved in. But my youngest child once said something I will never forget. "Baba, the grandpa is angry because we stopped paying attention to him." And since that day, I've understood one thing. Not all disturbances come to frighten. Some come because they are lonely, and the most dangerous ones are the ones that choose children as their companions.
What you've heard tonight didn't come with clear answers. And that's often how these experiences remain, unfinished, unexplained, and quietly carried by the people who lived through them. Not every presence comes with anger. Not every disturbance wants to frighten. Some simply appear because they are lonely. And sometimes, the most unsettling part isn't what they do, but who they choose to notice. If you're drawn to stories like these, quiet, respectful accounts of things that happened in familiar places, you're welcome to stay. New stories are shared here every week. And if you've ever experienced something similar, you may share it in the comments, calmly, respectfully, and in your own words. Until next time, stay aware of the quiet moments around you.